We've just had the first NAPF Local Authority Forum this year, which comes as the local government pension scheme, the LGPS, undergoes its most dramatic series of changes since the 1970s. What did the afternoon cover?
Well, the NAPF's local authority forums are a really good opportunity for local authority funds to get together and discuss the key issues facing the LGPS. At the forum, we heard from Joanne Seegers in her capacity as chair of the Shadow Scheme Advisory Board, where she talked about the board's emerging views on the DCLG structural reform consultation and also the future of the Scheme Advisory Board. In the afternoon, we also discussed collective investment vehicles, what the governance regulations mean for local authority pension funds, and what the latest developments in Europe mean for the LGPS as an institutional investor.
Looking more closely at the Department for Communities and Local Government's newly published draft governance regulations, what do these look like?
Well, the consultation sets out draft regulations on the governance arrangements for the new local government pension scheme, which came into effect on the 1st of April 2014. In particular, they allow for the establishment of a scheme advisory board at a national level and also local pension boards for each of the local authority funds. The regulations also set out how these bodies will be established, what their membership will be and what their role is.
So let's look at the draft regulations in a bit more detail, starting with the local pension boards. What do the draft regulations say about local pension board membership?
Draft regulations require an equal number of employer and employee representatives, critically saying that elected members, i.e. councillors, cannot be employee representatives under the new arrangements. Now, there are pros and cons to this approach. Obviously, elected members are subject to the electoral cycle, which means that trying to establish long-term, valuable members of the boards may be challenging. However, for small local authorities, they may find it difficult to find sufficient employer representation.
What do the regulations say about the establishment of the board?
The draft regulations set out two ways that these boards may be established, either under the Local Government Pensions Act 1972 or with an administering authority setting out exactly how they will function.
So what are the NAPF's thoughts on which option would be most appropriate?
The first of these options, the use of the 101 section of the Local Government Act, could be potentially quite difficult because there are some inherent conflicts between the 101 regime and how these boards are supposed to be set up and what their role will be. The second option, where administering authorities have much greater flexibility, does allow them to decide the best way of setting these up that's most appropriate for the boards. However, it will probably require further guidance on the areas that they should have discretion over and what they should be covering.
The draft regulations also state that the local pension board can be the same as an existing committee if approval is obtained from the Secretary of State. But what are the NAPF's views on this?
In practice, the local pensions boards and the pensions committees are set up under two very separate legal codes, and that makes it very, very difficult to try and combine those functions. That, plus the high hurdle of Secretary of State approval, means that we think that very few of these bodies would be established.
And does each administering authority need to establish its own board, or can boards be set up that cover more than one authority?
The consultation does look at joint pension boards, and the NAPF, in its previous response to the governance discussion paper last year, did argue that because of the limited resources local authority funds have, it would make sense to combine pension boards across different local authorities.
And what do the draft regulations say about the Scheme Advisory Board?
The regulations extend the role of the Scheme Advisory Board in two specific ways. Firstly, they say that it should be able to give advice to the Secretary of State without being asked for it. And secondly, that it can also give advice to administering authorities themselves about how they run their local fund.
And what are the next steps?
The NAPF is currently drafting our response to the consultation, and we would encourage our local authority members to feed into that. We expect a final version of the governance regulations in the autumn, but timescales, particularly for setting up local pension boards, are incredibly tight. So we would urge our local authority members to start looking at what they need to plan for now.
Thank you.